If you'd asked me a few years ago what family meant to me, I would have smiled and probably said something too poetic for my own good. Something like, home isn't a place, it's people. I used to believe that with every cell in my body. My name's Rachel. I'm 38, and up until not too long ago, I really did think our family was tight-knit, messy. Sure, loud, disorganized, often opinionated to a fault, but rooted in love, or so I thought. My daughter Ellie turned 6 just yesterday, July. It's supposed to be a joyful time, and we tried to make it one. We did. We planned her birthday a week early, so she could have the day she dreamed of. A party at the local water park with slides, lazy rivers, and too much sunblock. Just like she wanted. We booked the spot in advance, got her favorite cake, chocolate with those sparkly edible glitter stars, and let her pick out the swimsuit with flamingos that she fell in love with at Target. I remember standing there in the blazing heat, pretending not to panic when no one showed up from my husband's side of the family. Not one. I kept checking my phone, glancing at the entrance gate between cutting watermelon slices, and making sure Ellie didn't drown herself going down the big slide. Nothing. My siblings live out of state and I knew they couldn't come. But all of them live within 2 hours. They could have made it. They just did. We've got 9 birthdays in our big extended family in July, so my mother-in-law decided, without asking anyone, that our usual 4th of July barbecue would be one big July birthday bash. She made that call the night before. Ellie had already told us she didn't want to share her celebration. She wanted her own special day, and she deserved it. She's our firstborn, our rainbow baby after 2 miscarriages, and she'd been dreaming about that water park party for months. And honestly, after losing my mom, we needed this joy. We needed it to feel like something mattered again. So we told the family, we're doing Ellie's party separately. We'd love for you all to come. They didn't. We brushed it off, told ourselves maybe water parks weren't everyone's thing. Maybe the timing didn't work out. But I felt something small and tight take root in my chest that day. A little whisper I tried to ignore, like a crack forming in the foundation of something I'd always assumed was unshakable. It wasn't just the party, it was the silence that followed. When July 31st finally came, the real day of her birthday, I held on to hope. Maybe they'd call, maybe they'd show up with a balloon or a card. Maybe someone would remember this was more than a date on the calendar. It was her day. Only 2 of my husband's 5 siblings called. None of mine did, which while it hurt, wasn't surprising. We'd been drifting ever since Mom died. One grandparent called, just one. My dad still hasn't called. Last year he didn't either. That time I'd found out days later, while sitting at the bedside of my dying mother, that he was mad at me over something petty. I didn't even know he was upset until my brother let it slip between sips of lukewarm hospital coffee. Mom was unconscious by then. Morphine drip, shallow breathing, all of us pretending we were okay as she slipped away in that sterile room. I remember looking at her pale hand, still clutching her prayer beads, and feeling so damn helpless. She would have called, she would have brought way too many gifts, and worn that ridiculous sun hat, and picked Ellie up for their Tuesday library storytime run like clockwork. My mom never missed anything. She showed up. She loved. Losing her, it wasn't just a loss. It was like someone ripped the spine out of my life. She was my best friend, my person. I still catch myself reaching for the phone to call her when Ellie says something funny or when I feel overwhelmed after a long day. I think of her when I drive past the library, when I walk through Target, when I fold Ellie's pajamas because they used to shop for them together. She was woven into every routine of our lives, and now she's just. I guess I thought the family would rise to the occasion, fill the space she left. Not just for me, but for Ellie, for the little girl who talks about her grandma every single day, who asked me just last week why Nana stopped coming to storytime. I told her Nana is always with us in spirit. She accepted that like only children can, with wide-eyed belief. But yesterday when her birthday calls came in, I saw it in her face. She noticed. She noticed who didn't call. She asked about them, and I didn't know what to say. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and cried silently while running the faucet, so she wouldn't hear. Because how do you explain indifference to a child who loves so purely? How do you justify absence to someone who doesn't yet understand bitterness or family politics, or people choosing silence over love? I wish I had answers. I wish I knew how to let go of this anger, this hurt that feels like it's gnawing a hole in my chest. I keep telling myself that birthdays are just one day, that Ellie felt loved by us, and that should be enough. But it's not just about the party, it's about everything else. The months since my mom passed, the quiet rooms, the unanswered texts, the space that no one even tried to fill. I feel like I'm floating in a house full of ghosts, memories of laughter, of Tuesday afternoons, of birthday mornings with my mom holding a balloon and singing off-key. I'm trying to hold it all together for Ellie, but I'm tired, and angry, and I don't know what comes next. The morning after Ellie's birthday, I stood at the kitchen sink staring at a half-full cup of orange juice she hadn't finished. It sat next to the glitter-covered birthday girl plate she used for her waffle. I should have just thrown it in the dishwasher and moved on, but I stood there like it had something to say to me, like if I just stared long enough, it would explain why everything felt so heavy inside my chest. Ellie had already moved on, at least on the surface. She was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor building something with her magnet tiles, humming under her breath like she always did when she was focused. She hadn't brought up the unanswered calls again, not yet, but I knew she was still thinking about them, and I was thinking about everything. It wasn't just one missed party or a few forgotten calls, it was the totality of it. The emotional vacancy that had filled our lives since Mom died. That slow, creeping realization that the people I thought we could rely on didn't seem to care anymore. It started with the silence after her funeral. My mom passed away last October, ovarian cancer, fast and brutal. She was diagnosed in June and by October 10th she was gone. I remember that day so vividly it's tattooed on my brain. The way the sunlight came through the hospital window, the beeping machines going silent one by one, the stillness, my hand in hers, the crushing weight of it all. And then, after the service, after the condolences and the Facebook posts, and the casseroles, nothing. No more Tuesday calls, no more impromptu visits, just space, empty, echoing space. At first I excused it, told myself everyone was grieving, that we all grieve differently, that they'd reach out when they were ready. I waited. Then November came, Thanksgiving. My siblings didn't come, my dad stayed long enough to eat, then left without saying much. My husband's family said they'd stop by. They didn't. I cooked enough food for 15 people. We were 4 at the table. Christmas was worse. I pulled out the stockings and sat on the floor staring at the one with Nana stitched into the white fleece. I kept it up anyway, like if I left it hanging long enough, she'd walk through the door with her ridiculous jingle bell earrings and a bag of dollar store toys for Ellie. I should have seen the pattern then, the slow abandonment, but I clung to the hope that it was just a phase, that things would settle, that we'd find a new rhythm. But people showed their true colors, slowly, through the small choices they made, not calling, not showing up, not remembering. And Ellie's birthday, that was the last straw. It wasn't even about me anymore. It was about her, this bright, sweet, funny little girl, who still asked if she could draw a picture to send to heaven for her Nana, who reminded me to pack extra fruit snacks in her backpack so she could share with her friend me, who practiced how to say thank you for coming before her party because she wanted to be a good host. And yet no one came. I lay in bed that night, after she'd finally fallen asleep, my husband already out cold next to me, and I stared at the ceiling like it owed me something. I felt this pressure behind my ribs like a scream I was too exhausted to let out. I wanted to call them all, my dad, my siblings, every single one of my in-laws. I wanted to say how dare you leave her hanging like that, how dare you be so cold. But I did, because what would it solve? That question haunted me more than anything else. What would it change? Would it bring my mom back? Would it magically make Ellie's birthday whole again? Or would it just leave us more alone? I thought about my dad, about how he hadn't even texted, and this wasn't new. He'd started pulling away ever since I stood up to him last year. He's always been the kind of man who needs control, who expects compliance. I'm his only daughter. We've butted heads since I was 14, but we'd kept up a fragile peace, mostly for Mom's sake. When I called him out, when I dared to tell him that he wasn't entitled to speak to me with disrespect, he went radio silent. He skipped last year's birthday for Ellie, said he was busy, then showed up a week later like nothing happened. This year though, he didn't even try. And maybe the part that stings the most is that if my mom were alive, none of this would have happened. She was the glue, the peacekeeper, The one who remembered everyone's birthdays and anniversaries and reminded everyone else to call. She would have made Ellie's day a full-blown event. She would have stayed up baking cupcakes in little heart-shaped liners, and wrapped every gift in glitter paper. She would have called first thing in the morning, singing happy birthday in that goofy drawn-out way that made Ellie laugh. I realized, somewhere between midnight and 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, that I wasn't just mad at my family. I was mad at the universe, at God, at cancer, at time, at the way it strips things from you so quietly, so unfairly. One moment you have everything, and the next you're alone in a dark room, wondering why the people who should love your child don't even pick up the phone. I got up sometime around 4. The house was still. I sat in the living room, scrolling through old photos. One of my favorites popped up. Ellie in her Halloween bee costume when she was 3, perched on my mom's lap, both of them laughing. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. It felt like something inside me was splitting wide open. I wasn't just grieving I was grieving the idea of what family is supposed to be. I think that was the real breaking point. Not the party, not the missed calls, but the moment I finally admitted to myself that the family I thought I had, needed to believe I had, might not exist anymore. And I didn't know what the hell to do with that. The days after Ellie's birthday passed in a kind of suspended animation. I went through the motions, packing her lunches, answering work emails, pretending everything was fine when I walked past the neighbors. But inside, it was like something had cracked, and now I was holding the pieces together with trembling hands, hoping nobody noticed the glue. My husband Mark was angry too. He's never been a man of many words, but I could feel the storm rolling beneath his quiet. He sat stiffer at the dinner table. He barely touched his food. Every time a text pinged on his phone, and it wasn't from one of his siblings, I could see the irritation tighten in his jaw. I knew him too well to miss it. On the Friday after Ellie's birthday, he finally said it out loud. We were in the garage, pretending to reorganize the holiday boxes. He grabbed a bin labeled Easter, and just stood there holding it like it had betrayed him. They don't care, he said, not even looking at me. They just don't. I didn't have a response, not one that would make a difference, because he was right, and that acknowledgement, those 3 words, sucked the air out of the room. For him, for me, and for whatever hope we were still clinging to. It's one thing to feel disappointed. It's another thing entirely to look at the people you've celebrated, supported, checked in on for years, and realize that when it's your turn to need something as simple as presence, they give you nothing. Nothing but silence. Mark and I didn't talk much that night. We didn't need to. Our grief was running in parallel, thick like smoke between us, and somehow we both knew that if we let ourselves get too close to it, if we let the anger take up too much space, we might say things we couldn't take back. Still, that anger found other ways to bleed into my day. I stopped texting the family group chat. I stopped reacting to their Facebook posts about their kids' summer camps or school supply hauls. I muted threads and ignored updates. I couldn't stomach the performative familyness of it all anymore. It felt like I was watching a play I wasn't allowed to be part of anymore. And then came the guilt, because in the quiet hours, usually around midnight when I was folding laundry or scrolling endlessly through my phone, I'd start to second-guess everything. Was I being too sensitive? Was it just a bad time for them? Had I done something to push them away? That last one hurt the most, because I kept cycling back to my dad. I kept remembering that hospital room in October. My brother had said it so offhandedly. You know he's not talking to you because of what you said, right? And I remember blinking at him, feeling like I was underwater. What I said, I was sitting next to my dying mother, holding her hand, and somehow I was the villain in his mind. After the funeral he never reached out. Not a hug, not a how are you holding up. Just, gone. I told myself I didn't care, that I didn't need him, but then Ellie asked me the night after her birthday, why doesn't Grandpa call me anymore? And that cut deeper than anything he ever said to me, because it wasn't about me, it was about her. A little girl wondering why the people who say they love her are so good at disappearing. How do you explain to a child that love sometimes comes with conditions, that sometimes people hold grudges so tightly they forget to be human? The next week Ellie made a card for my mom, out of nowhere. It had hearts all over it, and a drawing of the 2 of them at the library sitting in a beanbag chair surrounded by books. She brought it to me with that soft smile of hers, and asked, can we send this to heaven? I said of course babe, and then I went into the bathroom, and cried for 20 minutes while the fan muffled the sound. I didn't know how to fix any of it. I didn't know how to protect her from this ache that I hadn't figured out how to carry myself. People love to say that grief comes in waves, but that's not always true. Sometimes it sits in your lungs, heavy and constant, like you've forgotten how to breathe the way you used to. And the anger, it began to fester. It bled into my parenting, even when I didn't want it to. I found myself snapping more easily when Ellie spilled juice, when she left her socks all over the living room, when she asked for another snack 5 minutes after dinner. I hated how short my fuse had become, how guilt came trailing behind every sharp word like smoke from a fire I couldn't put out. Mark noticed, of course. One night, after Ellie had gone to bed, he gently reached across the couch and took my hand. "You need to let yourself feel it," he said quietly. "You don't have to hold it all." But I didn't know how to let go. I'd been holding it for so long I wasn't sure who I was without it. It wasn't just about Mom anymore, or even Ellie's birthday. It was about every unspoken resentment, every moment of being the one who remembers, who shows up, who celebrates only to find no one did the same for me. It was about how I was taught to be the bigger person, for so long that I forgot I was allowed to have limits, that I was allowed to say this hurt me. And maybe most of all, it was about watching my daughter slowly, painfully learn that sometimes people you love don't love you back the way you expect, not because of anything you did, but because they are broken in ways you can't fix. I started writing in a notebook again, something I hadn't done in years. I wrote down every thought I was too afraid to say out loud, every curse, every memory, every moment of anger and shame and heartbreak. And as the pages filled, I began to feel something else creep in, underneath the grief. I don't know if it was the writing or just the passing of time, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, my grief began to harden into something else. Not bitterness, exactly, but a colder, quieter understanding that I didn't owe everyone access to my heart just because we shared blood. It started with one small decision. I stopped sending reminders. Every year I used to send out texts the week before everyone's birthday. Little nudges. "Hey, it's Jonah's birthday next Wednesday." Or "Don't forget Emma's turning 4 this weekend." I did it because I wanted my nieces and nephews to feel seen. Because I knew how much a simple call could mean. But this time, I didn't. And you know what happened? Most of those birthdays passed in silence. No calls. No cards. No cake photos posted in the group chat. That was the moment I realized I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the problem. I had been carrying the weight of these relationships like a pack mule while everyone else strolled by empty-handed. And when I put the weight down, no one even noticed. That realization both shattered me and set me free. I started saying no more often. Politely, but firmly. When my sister-in-law sent a group text about hosting a back-to-school BBQ, I didn't respond for 2 days. Then I said we won't make it, but thanks for the invite. That was it. No long explanation. No apology. No lies about a scheduling conflict. I stopped pretending. Mark noticed the difference. He didn't say anything right away, but I think he respected it. The shift. The new boundary. We talked late one night, just the two of us, sitting out on the porch while Ellie slept inside, cicadas humming somewhere in the darkness. "I think I'm done trying," I told him. "With all of them." He nodded. "Me too." And just like that, something heavy lifted between us, like we'd been holding our breath for months, and finally exhaled at the same time. We didn't go scorched earth. We didn't send angry texts or make dramatic announcements. We didn't block anyone. We simply stepped. We removed ourselves from the center of a web that had stopped including us a long time ago. And then we turned inward. We started new traditions. Every Tuesday, Ellie and I went to the library. Just the two of us. I packed a little snack box like Mom used to. And we'd sit in the kids' corner and read book after book until she was tired or bored or both. The first few times were hard. I missed Mom so much it physically hurt. But over time, those visits stopped being a painful echo, and started becoming something new. Something ours. We also started celebrating holidays differently. Not bigger, just better. For Halloween we threw a mini party for Ellie and 2 of her friends from school. Homemade spider cupcakes. A scavenger hunt in the backyard. A movie projected on the wall. She loved it. We didn't invite family. No one asked. On Thanksgiving we cooked just enough food for the three of us. No tension. No waiting for people who might show up late or not at all. We watched the parade, danced around the kitchen, and made our own gratitude list. Ellie's included. Mommy reading with me. Daddy's pancakes and Nana being in the stars. I cried later that night. But not out of pain. Out of something soft, like maybe we were finding a way through after all. Still, there were moments. Like when Ellie got sick with the flu in February, and we had no one to lean on. Or when her school had Grandparents' Day, and I had to email the teacher to explain why no one would be attending for her. That one broke me. I tried to hold it together. But when Ellie came home with glitter on her cheeks and said "It's okay, Mom," I just told my friends my Nana watches from heaven. I went into the laundry room and sobbed into a pile of towels. But even those moments, as gut-wrenching as they were, helped us build something stronger. Because we weren't waiting anymore. We weren't hoping people would change. We were building a life that didn't depend on their crumbs of attention. Mark started reaching out to old friends again. Guys he used to go fishing with. Men he trusted. I saw the way his shoulders relaxed after those conversations, like he was remembering there were people in the world who chose you. I did the same. I reconnected with a college friend I'd lost touch with after having Ellie. She lived 2 towns over now. Had kids of her own and understood grief in her bones. We started going on walks together every Sunday morning. Just us, thermoses of coffee in hand. Venting about life and laughing harder than I had in months. And Ellie, she kept growing. She lost her first tooth in April, started swim lessons in May, graduated kindergarten in June, wearing a paper cap she decorated with glitter glue and stickers. She's still soft and kind and endlessly curious. She still asks about Nana sometimes, but she stopped asking about the people who didn't call on her birthday. I think deep down she figured it out the same way I did. People show you who they are, and when they do, believe them. But more importantly, the people who do show up, they matter more than the ones who don't. And maybe, just maybe, that's the lesson my mom was trying to teach me all along. Through every dollar store gift, through every overstuffed Easter basket and storytime date and birthday call. Love is shown in presence, not performance. Ellie turned 7 last week. It crept up on me faster than I expected. I spent days preparing, ordering decorations, baking her favorite chocolate cupcakes, planning the backyard setup just right so the slip and slide wouldn't flood the flower bed. But the night before her birthday, after she'd gone to bed and Mark was out grabbing last-minute balloons, I sat alone in the kitchen and just stared at the cake I'd frosted. Not because something was wrong, but because something was different. I wasn't waiting anymore. Last year the silence from our families nearly swallowed me. This year I expected it. I didn't even look at my phone until noon. When I finally did, there were 2 missed calls. Both from friends. One of Mark's sisters sent a short happy birthday to Ellie text at 3. My brother, the one who'd sat with me at Mom's hospital bedside, sent a thumbs up emoji on a photo I posted. That was it. But this time I didn't cry. Instead I looked outside at the table Ellie and I had set up that morning together. Covered in rainbow streamers and paper crowns, I watched her chase bubbles with her 2 best friends from school. Her hair flying in the breeze. The kind of carefree joy that children wear like armor. I watched Mark laughing with the neighbor's son as they set up the water balloons, both of them already so. I heard music playing from the Bluetooth speaker, and I let it fill the house without shame. It wasn't the birthday party I used to dream of for her with a house full of aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents, but it was hers. It was joyful, warm, present, and most importantly, it was enough. After the party, once the sun started to dip and the kids were winding down with popsicles, Ellie climbed into my lap and rested her head on my chest. "Mom," she whispered. This was my favorite birthday ever. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Mine too." And I meant it. Because somewhere along the way, in the quiet rebuilding of our tiny family's life, I stopped chasing people who didn't want to be caught. I stopped begging for love that should have been given freely. I stopped holding the door open for people who didn't even bother to knock. Instead I turned around and realized the most important people were already standing inside. I think a part of me will always grieve the family I thought I had. I'll always wish my dad had picked up the phone, that my siblings reached out more, that my mother-in-law had looked at her granddaughter's face and seen something worth showing up for. But grief and joy, I've learned, aren't opposites. They're companions. I carry them both now, one in each hand. I still miss my mom every single, her voice, her hugs, her loud laugh that filled a room. But I also feel her in the space we've created, in the library visits, and the cupcakes, and the love that spills out of my daughter like sunlight. Ellie remembers her. That matters more than anything. She remembers the way mom let her pick 2 books instead of 1. How she always brought peppermints in her purse. How she never showed up empty-handed, even if it drove me crazy at the time. She remembers being loved, and that's the legacy I want to continue. Not for my sake, but for her. So now, when Ellie asks questions about people who aren't around, I don't make excuses. I don't sugarcoat. I tell her gently. Sometimes people have their own stuff they're dealing with, and they forget how to show love the right way. But that doesn't mean you aren't worth loving. You always. She nods like she understands. Maybe not completely, but more than I wish she had to. And me, I've learned that walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's the kind of boundary that protects not just me but the little girl who trusts me to show her what love should look like. I didn't burn bridges, but I stopped building them by myself. If one day they want to walk across again, they'll need to bring bricks too. Until then, we're here, with our story times, and our rainbow decorations, and our quiet little family made of 3 hearts that love each other fiercely. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. Actually, more than enough. It feels like home.